Coming up next on Art Rocks, the Lafayette painter whose love affair with Le Courir de Mardi Gras literally leaps from the canvas.
Well, the majority of the people in my paintings are people that I know. Unless I get great shots of somebody, if I don't know them, I'll turn that into a painting anyway.
We get an inside look at an edgy ballet company.
To have a power that lingers beyond the curtain. I want that power to linger in them.
Musicians combining diverse talents to create a whole new sound. And an artist for whom difficulty and discomfort are fundamental parts of the creative process. That's all right now on Art Rocks.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello, I'm James Fox Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine, and thank you for joining us for Art Rocks. Since Twelfth Night on January the 6th, the familiar balls and parades of the Mardi Gras season have been in full swing in the city of New Orleans. But across a swath of rural South Louisiana, folks mark carnival season with a very different tradition. Although a native of Kentucky, artist Herb Roe is as excited as any born and raised Cajun to celebrate the courir de Mardi Gras as it plays out in Eunice, not only as a participant in the traditional chase to put a chicken in the gumbo pot, but also as fodder for his striking, large-scale works in oil. Roe explains how he has become perhaps the premier painter chronicling how Mardi Gras rolls out on the Louisiana prairie.
Out of high school, I'd gotten a scholarship to a private school in Ohio. Went there for a year, ended up meeting Robert Dafford, who was doing a big mural project in my hometown of Portsmouth, Ohio. And I started working for him that summer, and then by the time I'd started school again in the fall, he convinced me to drop out of school and go to New Orleans with him and do a 9-story building. And it didn't take a whole lot of convincing. Because, 19-year-old kid in Ohio, college or run off to New Orleans for a year. So I dropped out of school.
Herb would spend the next 15 years painting murals with Dafford before settling down in his own studio in Lafayette 10 years ago. The move was both life and career changing.
I did a project with Robert for the Zydeco Byway Trail. So I'm creating all these little icons and little cartoon drawings and stuff for this big cartoon map. I had to do some research and do these little courier figures. And the more I played with them, I just finally decided I have to go do this. And about that time, a bunch of kids who'd grown up out in Mamou and Eunice and stuff had decided to start their own courier run to try to combat against some of the loss of traditions that was going on out there. So I went out there to go see it and run it with them and just fell in love. The riot of colors with everything, all the costumes, and I at the time was doing a lot of like costume drama stuff, pieces where I would dress models up and light them here in my studio and then shoot them and compose these big angels in classical attire and armor, costume storytelling reliant stuff. And seeing that, it was kind of similar to what I was doing because everybody's in costume and everybody's pretending to be something else and not being themselves for the day. And it just felt so close to what I was already doing. And I did have to costume and light them in the studio. I just have to stand there and shoot pictures all day and then compose them on my canvas later. So it was just brilliant. I loved it.
The images Herb captured that day and near every year since would become the stuff of more than 100 paintings that reveal what has been happening on Fat Tuesday out on the prairies of southern Louisiana, virtually unchanged for generations. Listen as Herb explains and watch as his paintings bring it all to life.
You get out there early in the morning because we start the run around 7:30, I guess. So you have to be there well before that. And there are eventually 300, 400, 500 of us there. And to do this run, you have to be in costume. There are no tourists on this run. If you're not in full costume, pants, shirt, and mask, you don't go. If you want music, you have to bring an instrument or open your mouth. There's no canned music. and we start making a circuit through the countryside. We're going from farmhouse to farmhouse. And we have the Capitan, and it's usually a white cowboy hat and this big purple and gold brocade cloak, and he has a little white flag. And it's part of a ritual. He gets up to the farmhouse, and everyone has to stop at the edge. You're not allowed to rush onto the property. And he goes up and asks for permission from the farmer if the Mardi Gras can visit his place. But part of your thing as being part of the troupe is you're also trying to break all the rules. He's the Capitan, and his little cohort of co-capitans with their whips are there to stop you from breaking the rules. But part of your job is to try to break as many of those rules as possible. So you got people trying to sneak onto the property, and then one of the Capitans will run over and hit them with the whip and drive them back. And while he's busy, somebody else is trying to sneak around behind him. But once he's begged for permission, he does his white flag, which is the signal for everyone to rush up. There are a couple different little ritual begging motions and chants and songs that you do to try to convince the farmer to give you food for the gumbo. So some of them, they'll throw you a bag of rice, a bag of seasonings, a bag of onions, a bag of peppers, all these different ingredients for a gumbo. But some of them will bring out a chicken. And it's Mardi Gras. It's usually a wet time of year. It's probably just rained, if it's not actually raining. And the chicken is on his home turf. He knows where all the fences are and the places to hide. So the farmer, sometimes he'll climb up on his porch, sometimes he'll climb up on his roof, or he'll set a ladder up and climb to the top of it. And then the good ones they'll make a show of making you beg more and more and more for the chicken. We have some people who are caterers, and while we're out doing the route, they're cooking 100 gallons of gumbo. The rest of the day is just bands and dancing.
With so many options, how does Herb decide what to paint?
Well, the majority of the people in my paintings are people that I know. Unless I get great shots of somebody, if I don't know them, I'll turn that into a painting anyway. I've always wanted to be a figurative painter. I love, doing faces and bodies and stuff. Faces create emotions and get you to feel like somebody was in the canvas staring back at you, not just a representation of something, but I want it to feel like a presence in them. For me, it's just showing it and documenting it. This is about 10 different photos composed together to make this scene. I'll shoot continuously, and then I'll pick, I like this character, I like his face, I like his arm, and I'll put them in together and compose this one shot.
The more Herb experiences of Cajun culture, the more his work evolves to document it.
The last year or two, I've been focusing a little bit more on boucheries. I like showing how all the different guys work together during the day, killing the hog and splitting it up, and then everyone cooking something different for it. Everybody working, slightly differently, and then coming together later on in the day for this big meal for everyone. One of the other things I'm focusing on right now is the whole plate lunch culture here. The whole rice and gravy phenomenon really kind of hits its peak here in Acadiana. They have different rotating specials throughout the day of the week. So, on Monday you're like, oh, I'm going here for that dish. On Tuesday I go there for this dish. On Wednesday I like to be here for this dish because that's what they do the best.
No matter where you live in Louisiana, opportunities to connect with the arts are everywhere, if only you know where to look. So here's a list of some of the goings-on coming up around the state. To learn more about these and other events in Louisiana, visit the website at lpb.org/artrocks or pick up a free copy of Country Roads magazine. LPB's Art Rocks website also features an archive of previous episodes, so to see any segment again, just log on to lpb.org. Our nation's capital, Washington D.C, is home to the Chamber Dance Project, a contemporary ballet company. Chamber dancers perform right alongside a live string quartet, a pairing that results in an unconventional experience for performers and audience alike. We went behind the scenes to learn more about this unique project.
With With Chamber Dance Project, our vision is to expand the audience's engagement in the process, as well as to collaborate with very high-end artists and create works of contemporary resonance. We start every morning with company class, and this is where they get their bodies ready for the day, which is fairly arduous. It's 5-6 hours of rehearsal. We've spent most of this year preparing for our second big season in D.C.
I met Diane last year, and she described the project, and it sounded really different from anything that I'd ever done before, which was to have 6 dancers and 4 musicians, all equal partners in this chamber, small scale, intimate kind of setting with the musicians on stage. To work with the same group of dancers and musicians so that we get a real joie de vivre and a true deep collaboration. We don't just bring the musicians in at the end and put them in the pit. They're on stage with us, and they're a big part of what we do.
The fact of having the live music is pretty awesome. Share the energy with the musicians and just make a bound that is special and different.
Just to see these beautiful dancers as we play is really, really rewarding.
I'm extremely grateful to Washington, D.C. I found it an extremely open and collaborative town, and so now it's really my home, and it's my artistic home, too. What we're doing is what I called SI, or structured improv. And the corollary for the musicians is I hand them score and parts for a piece they've never played together. So they are sight reading. The dancers don't know what the heck is going to come out of the quartet, and they're doing it together.
Everybody gets nervous about because we don't know what we're doing. They just put new music for the musicians, and we just go and try to create something with all of us together, which is it could be very dangerous if you're, if you're moving in a different direction. You don't know what you're doing. You can hurt somebody, but it's been
we collide.
It's been great to find out how people actually respond to your movement and around you. Aware with each other.
We're very used to have someone in front of us telling us what to do. But at this moment, we have the creative process on stage with the public staring. So you have no choice. You just have to make it happen and make it work.
It feels very awkward on stage, but the audience loves it. So that's what we're going to do at every show.
I like to think they're really on the edge, and the audience will experience that. And it is shockingly profound and fun. To have a certain visceral resonance, to have a power that lingers beyond the curtain. I want that power to linger in them.
I think the purpose is to give them something away from what the daily routine is. So they should just take away a piece of art in their hearts. We just want to give them a little motivation for something else and just make them fly and dream.
This story is about what happens when classical and jazz musicians join forces to create a sound that borrows the best from both worlds. We recently dropped in on a group from St. Louis, Missouri named the 442s during rehearsal. Let's take a listen.
hardest thing about categorizing this music, everybody likes categories. You know, you go to iTunes and you get your classical favorites and your top 40 favorites and your R&B favorites. The 442s are so hard to categorize because we delve into so many different areas of inspiration. And so we have not been able to find an easy moniker to kind of codify what we are. And that's tricky, and it's also freeing. It's hard when you're trying to explain to people what you do and who you are, but you just tell them, come in and hear us. Just listen to it, and that'll explain it.
The name the 442s comes from the standard tuning of A is 442 hertz, and that's what the oboist in the symphony plays to tune the orchestra before each concert, and that's kind of where we got that name. That felt great, yeah. That felt really good. Because it's going to break down soon again anyway, so it can feel like we're walking off the cliff a little bit. Well, I kind of am the utility man in the group. I do a little bit of everything. I do guitar and accordion and some percussion, some glockenspiel. I do all those things. I'm kind of running around on each tune, and I also compose most of the music.
Adam writes so well for all of us, and each time we come to the rehearsal, he's brought a new element of things that he's wanted to try and see, and we'll discuss it and we'll talk about it, and he'll have us come over to his place individually sometimes in between rehearsals and say, well, what sits well and what works? Does this work? Is this good? What can you do here? Each opportunity that we have to kind of stretch ourselves as musicians kind of goes into the sauce, you know, it adds a complexity to us as musicians, whatever genre we're playing, classical, jazz, pop, whatever. My tastes my entire life have been really, really diverse, and I've always been a big fan of every kind of music you can imagine.
For Sean and I being a part of the symphony, you know, you're there and you're playing the notes and you're following the direction of the conductor, and you're creating music in a way, but it's not your impetus. You're not the one who's calling the artistic shots. And when you have a group like this, we are that artistic impetus. We are the ones who are making the decisions and the voices, and we can change things. And I think for me, that's the most fun element of the 442s. Just getting a chance to play completely outside my comfort zone and outside the box. And one thing that's nice about the 442s is that not only do we have, you know, through composed pieces that we are all playing together what is written on the page, but we also have times where we're improvising as well. And so for Sean and I think from the symphony, that's really rare. You know, classical musicians are never encouraged or taught to improvise and to create music on the spot. And for us, I think it's a challenge, it's a thrill, it is nerve-wracking, it's scary, but it's so fun ultimately.
You know, it's kind of like classical acting versus improvisational stuff like Saturday Night Live. We're very much interpretive in our classical lives, and here we're able to both be interpretive and improvisatory.
It's uncharted waters for me, but Bjorn and Sean have a very strong pop sensibility, and they understand the feel of jazz, so it was really quite easy. That made my job so much easier because they have an inherent feel for groove, and they understand the other styles. I mean, Sean knows more about pop, jazz music, and you name it than most people that I've ever met. And Bjorn is very open to pop music, and he's quite funky, as you hear on some of the songs.
Because it's kind of everybody's second pursuit, we get to be very picky about what we do and where we play and how we're presented. And I think that's a huge advantage for us. And I think everybody who comes to our concerts can feel that we're very happy with the situation, you know, that we're playing in right there. And we don't have to do anything we don't want to do.
We start with what Adam writes, and it's a great product, and we want to perform it in the most convincing way and really take it to where it needs to be, which is something that we kind of get together ahead of time, and then we'll go in and just kind of let it fly in our concerts. And a lot of times things will happen in a show that never could have really happened in a rehearsal just because of the energy that we get from the audience.
I view this as another form of chamber music, and I'm very, very busy outside of Powell Hall, filling myself up with other things and other experiences. And I think we could all say that this group is another facet of our life where we can pour ourselves into something completely different. So it's not difficult to transition. It's just part of kind of being that complete musician and finding so many different areas that make up your whole.
And I think the more we do things and the more we push this and the further we can see this goes, the more we realize that it's all part of the same big sonic realm of what it is we all do.
Now it's time for our Louisiana Treasures segment. The era before the Civil War was a time of charm or horror in Louisiana history, depending on your vantage point. But the plantation economy undeniably produced some astonishing achievements in both architecture and landscaping. Both are evident at Rosedown Plantation in West Feliciana Parish, the home created for Daniel and Martha Turnbull.
Martha quickly began landscaping, planting dozens of live oak trees, 35 feet apart. As Martha's trees took root, designs were drawn up for this two-story mansion, complete with 12 huge columns and 2 small ones. The cypress columns were reportedly harvested from the grounds at Rosedown and then hand-turned by slaves. The house would have 6 bedrooms and 3 porches, 2 out front, 1 upstairs, and 1 downstairs. A third porch would be built out back. Observers believe the couple designed the house themselves because of similarities between Rosedown and Martha's childhood home, Highland Plantation.
Rosedown has a very unusual plan in that it doesn't have a central hallway that extends front to back through the entire width of the home. That was a very standard plan for this time because of the cross ventilation that the hallway would provide. That was their air conditioning. Rosedown has a formal entry hall backed by a very formal dining room, which in effect cuts that central space in half. But if you've been to Highland, you see that they have that same plan.
Daniel did make arrangements for the air circulation. There's a half window that you can raise and a half door underneath the window that you can open. In most of the rooms, they have fireside cupboards on either side of the chimney. There is also a pair of built-in bookcases in one of the rooms. And these are features you don't normally see in houses from that time period. The Turnbulls hired a builder to turn their blueprints into reality. The vast majority of the construction was done by slaves.
They built a sawmill when they first began construction on the house so they could mill their own lumber. Most of the lumber that went into the construction of the house was taken from the Rosedown acreage. Well, they had their own brick foundry. Most of the bricks that were used to build the foundations of the houses and the outbuildings were all made here.
The Turnbulls added built-in china cabinets. They added a kitchen behind their home, just as most homeowners of their generation did. Family records show that Daniel and Martha spent $13,109 on building supplies alone.
Confronted with challenging tasks, most of us start looking around for a shortcut. But for Florida artist Enrique Celaya, difficulty and discomfort are fundamental parts of the artistic process. Every piece, as he explains, entails a battle to achieve the greatest artistic authenticity.
I create environments for galleries and museums that consist of paintings, sculptures, photographs, writings, but I might also work on something like videos or performance, anything that gives me the opportunity to work in the material that I'm interested in working with, and also something that makes me feel uncomfortable while working, which is part of my interest. I set out to do my work always without a plan, only based on writings, and the writings are not really for the content, but rather from the ethical space in which I'm going to work. So these new works, are uncomfortable and difficult. I'm working on a painting right now that is a difficult painting because I'm setting it up from the beginning to be a difficult painting, a difficult painting to realize in any kind of sophistication. And I like that problem. Not to be cute, but because in the struggle with that kind of problems, I can discover something about the work itself, what I'm after, and wrestle out of that problem a certain authentic discovery that feels new to me, and in which I recognize something basic about that encounter between myself and the work. And that's still the reason why I'm an artist.
And that's that for this edition of Art Rocks. But remember, you can always watch episodes of the show at lpb.org/artrocks. And meanwhile, Country Roads magazine is another great place to find out what's going on in arts and culture all across the state. So until next week, I'm James Fox Smith, and thanks for watching.